The provincial government in Ontario plans to open far fewer pot stores than anticipated. Back in September, the government said it wouldn't cap the number of licenses it grants. But since legalization, the market has struggled with a supply shortage. So the government is reversing course and will only issue 25 licenses between now and April. Is this a setback for pot producers? Terry Lake is the Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility at HEXO. Hi, Mr. Lake. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Vashi. Nice to be back with you.
Thanks for coming in. So Ontario, the government in Ontario is saying that it has to limit the number of marijuana storefront licenses, I should say, because there's just not enough product available. And they're blaming the federal government and federal suppliers. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, it's true. There is a supply issue at the moment. We see in Quebec having to close the stores for 3 days a week, and even in Alberta, they're having difficulty getting supply. So it's not unusual across the country, but I do think it's relatively temporary. And so the problem with this decision, in my view, it's a bit of a overreaction to the supply issue, because many producers, like HEXO, are very busily increasing their capacity to grow. So, for instance, our new 1 million square foot greenhouse will be open in January, and plants will start coming out of there in the late spring. And many other licensed producers are in the same position. So I think the supply issue, by the time we get to March, April, will have sorted itself out for the most part. So I think that's
enough, though, because
Yeah.
Quebec is closed for a number of,
Right.
it is being a big issue so far.
Well, there's no question it's been an issue, but everyone has been pushing and pushing and pushing. So they're doubling down on the speed at which they complete these capital expansions. So, is it a concern? Yes, and I think, if they built some flexibility into this, the design of this plan for April, that would be helpful. For instance, if you say, well, we're going to start with 25, but we're going to pre-approve a whole bunch leading up to that, so that if we see the supply issue has eased, we can quickly put another 25 in the hopper, then another 25 in the hopper. Because, as you saw, Toronto and Ottawa have okayed cannabis retail outlets in their cities. And here in Ottawa alone, I'm sure we could support 25 to 30 cannabis stores just in this city.
What has been, from your perspective, behind the supply issue? Is it that companies like yours, the capital sort of expenditures were over a certain amount of time? Was it that the federal government didn't give licenses quick enough? What is behind it, do you think? Or is it a combination of
It's as always, it's multifactorial. A number of different things come into play. So, we can only build and grow our expansion as quickly as we can get Health Canada to come in and do the appropriate inspections. And, we put plans in front of Health Canada. We have to get approval for those plans before we can move to the next phase. So, for instance, in our last expansion, each phase of the expansion was approved by Health Canada. Then we could put plants in it, had to go to the next phase, have that approved. And so it's a combination of the ability of the licensed producers to get the work done in a timely fashion, but then they're dependent on the regulator to come and approve all those. And with this great rush of applications into Health Canada, it simply caused a backlog. And again, a combination of things. And then in other places, you've got provincial governments that were a little bit slow off the mark, and local governments in some provinces that have a much higher level of input into approving stores. And so it is multifactorial, but we always knew it was going to be a bit bumpy, for sure.
As far as the Ontario plan goes, the Cannabis Council of Canada weighed in, and they agreed with the sort of phased-in approach of licensing, because they say that it means stores are more likely to be stocked. Do they? I mean, at least the stores that are up and running will have stock in them. Is there a point there?
Well, I think there's some validity to that for sure. But I mean, would it be better to have more stores with 50% of the stock there, or a few stores that are fully stocked? I do think it's going to create some issues, because if you're one of those really lucky people to win the lottery and get a store license, what is that license going to be worth later on? There's a lot of details to become clear as we move through this. But again, I think this is a reaction to the lack of supply for sure, and it makes sense in some ways. But again, if it can respond to a change in the supply issue, then that would be helpful, because you know, it's really difficult for everybody. We're trying to eliminate the black market. We're trying to make sure that Canadians have the ability to follow the law, and we've already seen so much demand for this product. And from people, from people that I knew this was going to come, but a lot of people were surprised by the type of people looking for cannabis. People that are in their 50s, 60s, into their 70s, that are looking to cannabis to help them with sleep issues, with menopause, with mood disorders, with arthritis, and just, you know, wellness. And then, of course, people that are just wanting to go back to an experience they might have had in high school and curious about what that would be like today. But it isn't the normal kind of stereotyped pot user that a lot of people thought it would be, and so the demand is high.
Yeah, does that mean that demand outpaced what expectations were from where you sit? I know you say that you kind of thought it would happen, but in general, the people who were trying to figure out how to match supply and demand or what to do to facilitate that, is this more than they expected?
I think it's more than anyone expected. We all knew it would be tight. You know, we tried to be optimistic, obviously, because, you know, that's the nature of the beast. You're trying to make this run well, and you're trying to give people an optimistic view of this new world post-prohibition. And I think all of us were perhaps a little too optimistic, but I don't think anybody envisioned the tremendous shortages we've had, because I mean, when you see lineups in Montreal, and I loved a caption I saw that Canadians must be the most honest people in the world if you're lining up for hours to buy pot in Montreal, you know, where you can get it just about anywhere on the black market. It shows that Canadians really want this to work. They really want to buy it from a trusted, regulated retailer. And so to me, that means it's a good thing. It causes problems short term for us as an industry, but long term, I think that's a very positive signal for us.
So you expect springtime things to regulate themselves?
I think between, you know, March and certainly end of May, I think the supply issue will largely have eased itself. And then, of course, we'll have more stores coming on across the country. British Columbia, you know, we only have 3 stores there at the moment, so many more to come there. And then stores in Alberta will have more supply. There are over 120 now, I think, licensed producers across the country that are rapidly expanding and putting out products. So I do think that this is a bit of a blip.
We'll check back in the spring then. Thanks, Mr. Lake.
Thanks, Vashi.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.